Hey everyone, I'm Mariana, and today I am back with my September movie and TV wrap-up. I'm going to be talking about everything that I watched throughout September, and I'm starting with TV. As always, I only have two shows to talk about. The first one is Riverdale. I finally finished Riverdale. I started it a while ago, and if you've seen that wrap-up where I talk about it, you know that I wasn't the biggest fan of the show. It is a pretty typical CW teen drama mystery. I call it the Pretty Little Liars replacement, and my opinion really hasn't changed because it's not the greatest show out there. It is a very easy TV show to get into, and once you start watching it, you kind of want to keep watching it even though you know it's not great because the mystery is interesting, and if that means anything to you, it is based on the Archie comics. That doesn't really mean a lot to me because I've never read any, but I guess it's kind of a big deal. Regardless, I did end up finishing it pretty quickly because, like I said, this is very easy to binge, and I will be watching season 2, I think, even though it's not the greatest show. If you've ever watched a show like that, you know exactly what I mean, because this is what people usually refer to as the guilty pleasure. You know it's not great, but you just want to keep watching it for some reason. I don't really feel guilty about watching things, so I don't really use that term, but if you want to put a label on it, yes, this is, I guess, the closest thing that I have to a guilty pleasure. Would I recommend it? Kind of. I would recommend it to someone who's looking for a new guilty pleasure, but as far as an example of great TV and great writing goes, no, I would not recommend Riverdale. If I were to rate it, I would probably give season 1 a 3 out of 5. That seems about fair, so there's that. The other show that I started watching but have not finished yet, I'm about halfway through the first season, is Twin Peaks. No, I have never watched Twin Peaks before. I know, crazy, but with everybody raving about the revival, I thought it was about time, and I am a big fan of it. I'm loving it, unsurprisingly. David Lynch is an interesting director, and this show is a murder mystery like I've never seen before. I am loving the characters, I'm loving the cinematography, the story is interesting. It is a little bit weird how it will play out like a regular mystery, and then strange, bizarre things will happen as per David Lynch's style that just make you go, huh? What was that? So I'm enjoying that for sure, and Agent Dale Cooper is just... the way he appreciates simple things such as trees, pie, and coffee just makes me feel like I don't appreciate things enough in life. Obviously, I am not going to rate this just yet because I am not finished, but once I do finish season 1 and season 2, I will get back to you. And now onto my Letterboxd. I am Impression Blend on there just as I am on all of the social media, and if you want to know everything that I'm watching as I'm watching it, you should follow me on that website. So the month started off really well, as you can see. The first movie that I watched was Jackie on September 3rd, and I loved that movie more than I thought I would. Natalie Portman is phenomenal as Jackie. I actually had to pause in the middle of the movie to watch an interview with Jackie Kennedy because I wanted to know how closely did Natalie Portman copy her, and she pretty much became Jackie for this movie, I'm not going to lie. The score for this film and the atmosphere are just perfection. I loved the unusual approach to a biopic, and I would highly, highly recommend this film. It is a pretty slow burn, but it is fascinating in my opinion, so 4.5 out of 5 stars for Jackie. Next, I watched Y Tu Mama Tambien. I think that's how you pronounce the title. I am sorry if I butchered it. This is directed by Alfonso Cuarón, and I was not prepared for this movie because I had no idea what I was getting into. This is a movie a lot of people recommend, but nobody really says what it's about other than this being a coming-of-age story, so that's all I knew going into it, and yeah, this is an interesting film. There is a lot of sex and nudity, and the characters are often crass, so that's why this movie is not going to be for everyone. I'm not opposed to these things in movies. I was just not ready mentally for all of that, so it took me some time to adjust. Also, there is a lot of voiceover, so if you're somebody who doesn't like reading subtitles, this may be a bit of a problem. However, if you do get over all of that and you decide to stick around, you are not going to be disappointed. It is completely worth your time. It is a beautiful story. It is emotionally impactful. It may not look like it has a lot of depth in the beginning, but it certainly gets there, and the performances along with the direction make this a very memorable experience. So check it out. Just be aware of what you're getting into. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. After that, I rewatched Dunkirk because I really wanted to see how it holds up on a second viewing, and also how it holds up without the IMAX experience. I just went to see it in a regular theater, and as you can tell, I loved it just as much, except for you notice even more stuff about the writing and the timelines and how cleverly everything is written. Obviously, 5 out of 5. Still my favorite film of the year at this point. If you missed my review, I will link it down below. Then I saw the new adaptation of Stephen King's It, and if you've seen my review, you know that I really enjoyed it, gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Also went to see Mother, which is something I have a review for as well, and I pretty much loved this movie. I know this is a bit of a controversial topic, but if you want to hear my thoughts on it, you guessed it, check out my review. Then I watched Berlin Syndrome, which came out earlier this year. I missed it in theaters, but it's out on Netflix now. This is actually a really good psychological thriller. It's a character study and one of the more realistic films that have to do with a kidnapping. Great performances from the 2 leads, especially from Teresa Palmer, and this is definitely flying under the radar. If you are into kidnapping, psychological type movies, I would definitely recommend checking this one out. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I watched a Netflix documentary, Icarus, and I was a little bit disappointed by this because I thought I was going to watch a documentary about doping just in general, but this ended up very quickly being focused on the Russian doping scandal of the recent time. So if you want to watch a documentary about that, then this may be something that interests you, but it doesn't really offer anything new. So if you've been following the situation when it was in the news, then this isn't really going to give you much new information. It does turn it into a bit of a political thriller, and what kind of disappointed me as well was the fact that the guy that they keep interviewing is just so obviously paranoid and conspiracy theory obsessed that it is hard to take him seriously. Now, I'm not saying that these things didn't happen. Obviously, we do know a lot of the facts, but it definitely embellishes it with that political thriller spice, and they also go all in on George Orwell references, so I thought it was mostly okay, so 3 out of 5 stars for me. Then I watched a fantastic thriller from South Korea. This is The Chaser, directed by the same guy who directed The Wailing, which I loved last year, and this movie really took me by surprise. I didn't really know, once again, what I was getting into with this. I thought this was going to be a pretty standard revenge film, which I love revenge films, but this turned out to be something completely different entirely. And I'm actually going to do a review on this very soon, so I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm just going to recommend it to everybody who wants to see a good thriller, because this is excellent. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then I went to see Kingsman: The Golden Circle, and it was pretty much exactly what I expected it to be. I did not have very high hopes going into this. I originally wasn't really that excited for the sequel even existing, but then the trailers were really great, so I kind of got excited for it, but it's, you know, it's alright, at least in my opinion. There's just too much going on in this movie. They completely overstuffed it. It feels too long. It's only 10 minutes or so longer than the original Kingsman, but it feels like there's at least 30 extra minutes in this movie. There are some really great actors in it that just don't get a chance to shine. The sidekick this time around is nowhere near as cool or as much fun as Gazelle from the first movie. Basically, it's impossible not to compare it to the first one, and I did have some issues with the first movie, but this was just kind of okay. It's not a terrible film. It's not bad. You can watch it, and there are some enjoyable scenes in it, but overall, it's just kind of okay. I do have to say that Pedro Pascal completely stole the show for me. Our beloved Oberyn Martell, how could we not love him? He was so good as Agent Whiskey. Agent Whiskey, what a great name. Anyways, it was okay. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I rewatched Black Swan, which is a movie I really love. It's one of my favorite films, so obviously I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I do have to say I love this movie more and more every time I watch it, so I have been rating it 4.5 out of 5 before this, but this time around I just had to give it 5 out of 5 because it's great. Also rewatched Saw, which I haven't seen since it came out, and I have to say it's not as great as I remember it to be. Some of the acting is pretty cringeworthy, and so is some of the dialogue. The idea and the mystery are still really, really interesting, and the movie does hold up in that sense, but it's starting to look a little dated, particularly because of the acting. So I ended up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I may continue watching the franchise. I don't think I've seen anything past the third movie or the fourth movie. The third or the fourth movie. So I do want to eventually finish the entire thing, but I'm a little bit concerned that after this experience with Saw, I will not enjoy the rest of the franchise as much as I thought I would. Then I watched Roman Polanski's Repulsion, and this was a very interesting experience. I think a lot of people are going to have different interpretations of this one. It's very much a character slash mood type of film. It does have a lot to say, but it leaves a lot to the interpretation of the viewers, and I do think there was more room for exploration here, but Polanski decided not to go that route. Unfortunately, I wish he would have done a little bit more. This is obviously about a woman who is repulsed by men, but the reason for that and everything that happens is kind of up in the air as far as your interpretation goes. So if you like watching movies that make you think about them for a while afterwards and make you interpret things your own way, then definitely check it out if you haven't for some reason. I know this is a classic that a lot of people have seen. I just haven't seen it until now. However, if you're the kind of person who wants definite answers from a film, this may be a little bit frustrating. I personally really enjoyed it though, so 4 out of 5 stars. After that, I watched John Carpenter's Vampires, and this really just wasn't my cup of tea. I am a big fan of vampires, don't get me wrong, but I guess I'm just very particular about the kind of vampires I like watching and the kind of stories I like watching when it comes to those vampires, and this just was not it. It does mostly hold up if you're into that kind of action approach to vampire stories. It's mostly about these vampire hunters who are on the mission for revenge, and it's all very 90s, but for me, it really didn't do much. I wasn't a fan, so I ended up giving it 2.5 out of 5 stars. After that, I once again was not prepared for what I was getting myself into with All About My Mother. This is a Pedro Almodovar film, and this guy is becoming one of my favorite directors because he really knows how to write his characters and how to pull at your heartstrings, because this movie kind of crushed me emotionally. The story is about a single mother who, because of some tragic events, decides to go and find the father of her son, who is not aware he even has a son. And on her journey, she encounters a lot of wonderful and different women. Pedro Almodovar really knows how to write his characters and how to direct his actresses, because it is impossible to stay neutral watching this film, I think. Even if you aren't somebody who gets emotional easily over movies, this one is going to get to you. This is on a whole different level. I could not recommend this enough. If you need to sit down and have a good emotional viewing experience, this is your movie, and it is fantastic. And the last film that I saw in September was Gerald's Game, because this just came out on Netflix. I thought it was a really good thriller that ended up kind of falling apart in the last 10 minutes, because the epilogue of this movie was just... It was really strange. It did not belong with the rest of the film. It felt like something that shouldn't have been there. I understand wanting to get some closure, but it was just not done well. I did enjoy the movie for the most part though, so don't think that I didn't like Gerald's Game. I definitely did, and I will have a review for this on Wednesday, so look forward to that. And that was it for September and the movies that I watched. My favorites, not including the rewatches, would have to be obviously All About My Mother, The Chaser, and Jackie, but I did watch a lot of solid films in September. Hopefully October is just as good to me as far as the movies go. That's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any recommendations for me based on what I've talked about today, leave them in the comments below. And of course, all of the reviews that I mentioned are in the info box, so check them out. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I hope you're having an awesome day. I will see you soon. Bye.